Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Soha, co-founder and CEO of Akadion. We are really happy to have you all here today. Akadion is a startup supported by Cecil, one of the University of Toronto accelerators. Our mission is to empower the global academic community through equitable access to knowledge, support, and meaningful opportunities. We are building a community where everyone can confidently navigate academic system while shaping their future careers. Our goal is to create a space where graduate students, postdocs, and early career researchers can connect, learn from each other, and explore opportunities beyond traditional academic paths. As part of this mission, we organize webinars, workshops, and mentorship programs that help researchers develop skills and expand their professional networks. Today, I am excited to be joined by Dr. Andrew Churchill. Andrew earned his PhD in education from McGill University in 2011 and has spent the past 15 years helping researchers become more confident and effective communicators. He works with individual researchers, institutes, and universities to deliver programs that help researchers grow from nervous presenter into confident award-winning speaker. We are very grateful that Andrew is joining us today to share his experience and insights on presenting research within and beyond academia. Andrew, thank you for being here. Could you tell us a little about yourself, your journey, and what inspired you to begin this work?
I think one of the things that inspired me is my own is partially my own speaking story. The first graduate student, not the first class I ever taught, but the first graduate student class I taught, a bit of a disaster actually, and it didn't go well. And I was confused. I was like, why didn't that go well? Like I've always been good at speaking, I've always been good at teaching, but it didn't translate to the graduate student speak. And I had an interesting moment um, on the review that people in the audience here have done reviews, these teaching reviews, right? The teaching review that I did said Andrew should never teach McGill again. And they were kind of right. Like that version of me shouldn't keep teaching if I couldn't change. And that's actually what the director of the Faculty of Education at the time said. He said, Andy, don't worry about it. He says no one does a great job in their first class. The question is, how are you going to do, is your second class going to be better? Is your third class going to be better than that? Is your fourth class going to be better than that? And that's inspired me to help other people on that journey. Nobody starts great at presenting. The question isn't how good are you at presenting? The question is, are you better next time? 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 Because that's how we get better. We create this upward spiral of growth. So when I had an opportunity to teach an academic presentation course for graduate students at McGill in 2013, I jumped at it and I did it. And that's when I knew. I said, I don't want to be in the writing space. I want to be in the oral communication space because it's more complex and there's more going on. I had been in the writing space. I had been a writing instructor. But I love the presentation space because of the psychology of it. It's not just what's happening with words, but it's with how the words are delivered, and it's with how does the person feel who's delivering the words, because that's a critical piece of it. So that's a bit about how I started, not successfully, but
No,
successful
that's
now.
great story, actually. So you partially answer my question, then my next question. So why is important to be a great communicator and presenter in the academia or beyond? Why is that having this skill is so important?
I think it's actually never been more important. I think I think it's always been important, but it used to be a lot less complicated. It used to be that speaking was just kind of an oral reading of your research journal article, and talks themselves didn't have to be particularly interesting. They just had to be factually accurate and contain interesting information. And now actually talks need to be engaging. Now, like, we've had this little thing called TED, right? And it's changed how people speak, and it's changed what people expect of speakers. And the old way of sharing scientific research doesn't engage an audience anymore. It may never have really engaged an audience, but now it definitely doesn't. So it's becoming important to understand the complexity of how talks work, and to be effective at it. And then so we started with this little thing called TED, right? And TED Talks, and that changed speaking, and the expectations around speaking. And I don't think you should do a conference talk like a TED Talk, by the way. I actually did a YouTube video on this about 4 months ago about why, like, TED Talks are not research talks. That's not what you should be trying to do. But it has changed how you have to do research talks. Not like them, but informed by them. And then there's this other little thing that's cropped up in the last couple of years called AI, right? And we have chat, and we have Claude, and we have lots of these little friends that'll run around. And what's happened is we don't trust your writing anymore. As simple as that, right? When you write something, we don't trust it. We don't trust it the way, and therefore we don't value it the same way we used to value it. We used to evaluate people, and we used to evaluate people's knowledge by their writing. And we can't do that anymore, because unfortunately we don't know if your writing is yours. But when you speak, you can't hide. Especially in the Q&A, especially when you do something contemporaneously like this, right? So how you asked me early on, do you want to prepare something and do a lecture? I said, no. People don't trust that lecture space as much anymore, right? There's a different feeling around that lecture space, because we're like, who made the slides? Who wrote the script? Who wrote that? But this is real.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I think we're craving in this world right now. We're craving real, we're craving authentic. And that's why when you asked me if I would do this, I said, yes, of course. Because this is what we need to be doing more of. And this is oral communication. This is presentation. This is we learn this skill in the beginning through presentation skills, but then we develop it over time through this extemporaneous speaking space that we need to gain mastery of.
Yeah, actually, we have many questions about the AI, but before we go to how we should use the AI or how we should use it, let's just focus on the academia first. We have many types of the presentation when we are in an academic environment, when as a graduate student or postdoc. So it's different type of, even you present your research, there's different types. So it's your presentation in your research group or in your defense is completely different if you present in a conference, or we have this 3-minute thesis that you have just deliver your research just in 3 minutes. So how a student should prepare for different type of the presentation in academia? What is the differences is? Because it still is going to be the people in their field, but the audience is, or the goal of each of this presentation is different.
So you got one piece right there, goal, right? Goal or purpose. What do you like? One of the things you and I love this question, by the way. I have a digital course now, a digital ecosystem. We're going to put some links in later, where you can see some of and have access to some of the things that I do. But the digital course, I start with, what's your next presentation? And I have a 8 to 10 minute video on each of these different types of presentations, because a 3-minute thesis is different than a dissertation defense, is different than an academic conference, is different than a startup founder pitch based on, that's coming out of your lab with research. Each of those are different. And we don't talk about that enough. We talk about a research presentation as if research presentation is a thing, but that's like talking about music as if music is a thing. Music, yes, music is a thing, but there's a difference between classical music and a violin and a cappella and rock and roll. Right? Those aren't the same thing. And presentations aren't the same thing, right? A minute ago I was talking about TED Talks and how TED Talks have changed the expectations around presentations, but that doesn't mean you should be a TED Talk. You shouldn't. But you need to be engaging, you need to be dynamic, even within the boundaries of an academic conference talk. The boundaries of an academic conference talk are different than the boundaries of a 3-minute thesis talk. The boundaries of a dissertation defense are narrower, more narrow than a 3-minute thesis.
Yes, he's here. Okay. Okay. So sorry for what happened. I don't know what was the issue. Hi, Andrew. Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. And let's continue. So you were talking about different type of presentation in academia, and then we lost you. So
it's just this idea that different types of presentations have different needs, right?
Yeah.
And we need to be not thinking about academic presentations as a monolith, but thinking about the particular norms and expectations of different presentations, and we start that analysis with audience and purpose. Who is it that we're talking to? What is it that they know? How can we get them, like we know where we want to get them to, but we have to recognize where they are, and we have to kind of hold their hand and take them there, right? That's our job as a presenter, is not to dumb it down and just stay where they are, but to get them to where we want to be. And that's the challenge.
Yeah. So we have a few questions about those that want to pursue a career in academia. So, for the faculty interview, there is a multiple step of interview and different type of the presentation, teaching presentation. Then it's going to be open research talk, and then it's going to be the perspective, the future of what the person wants to do as a faculty member to the committee. So each one of them has different goal and different audience. And the whole idea is that to see this person is the ability to be an independent researcher. So it's very, very important. And what your advice is to preparing for these three different type of the presentation. Also, there's going to be conversation one-to-one with every or many of the faculty. Yeah.
You need to get familiar with these different types of presentations, right? So as people come and somebody's doing like you're in your first or the second year of your PhD and someone in there is coming and doing a job talk, go watch it. Go watch it. And ask the people who are sitting on the committee how they evaluated it, right? Like, you're a researcher, be a researcher. And you need to take responsibility to get to know these different spaces, these different types of talks. That's on you. Like, we don't have enough time today to go into all the different levels of detail, but you can't do a job talk the way you would do a classroom lecture. Classroom lecture is a very different space. And you can't go out and have dinner with someone and have a conversation the same way you would as you were as if you were doing a job talk. Part of the problem, you know, I earlier I talked about why I had failed. I talked about the fact that I had failed, but I didn't talk about why. One of the reasons I failed in my graduate student class is because I was talking to undergrads in my head. I was doing an undergrad lecture to a graduate student class. Very different thing, very different people, very different places, right? And that's the level that you need to start operating at and playing at. And in the beginning of it, it's coming in and listening to people like you're a step closer because you're here today, right? And you're curious. Keep that curiosity. Go watch people do job talks. Listen to job talks. Think about as you're thinking about speakers. Don't think about just, is this an effective speaker? But think about, what's this speaker doing to effectively connect with this audience at this particular point in time? Because that's really the question. It's not something that, it's not generic, right? It's not there. We don't generically have good speakers and bad speakers. We have speakers who are effective with this particular audience at this particular point in time. And that's what you need to, that's the way you need to start thinking about this space. It's different, that most people don't. And as soon as you do that, you'll be well on your way to being better than most people are, because most people don't think about those things. Most people just have the way they speak, or the way they stand, or the way they, and that's, you know, if I was doing a, you know, for instance, this particular moment, right? I'm seated. If I was doing a presentation, I'd be standing. If I was standing right now, I would be more dynamic. There's an advantage to standing, but it might feel odd, like Soha and I are having a conversation. If one person's standing and one person's seating, something in the back of our head feels a little off about that. So I'm seated because you're seated. I'm meeting, like, this is you're hosting this. This is your space. I'm meeting you in your space where you are, which is seated. It's a very simple thing, but I thought about it. I made that decision. These are the things we want to be thinking about.
Yeah. So what I understand is that the importance of actually see other people and evaluate other speaker. So you learn from what they are good at it or what their mistakes are. So having said that, so it was 2 weeks ago, I attended CSC conference in Toronto, and I attended many presentations. So I saw many of, actually not many, so I see some of the presenter use the humor, just tell about their family or pets, or even they share their photos during their talk. Some of them was actually make the talk more engaging, but sometimes I feel it's not fitted. I never use this type of sharing of my personal life or pets or children. But what do you think? What is your perspective? Is it in a scientific research conference? Should we do that or shouldn't? Or what do you think?
It's funny, I was just doing I actually just did a YouTube video dealing with this a little bit. And the way to think about it, like, are you inserting it or does it just naturally occur? Right? So I shared like a personal moment of mine of failure, right? I shared earlier a moment of success, like a little 5K run. Those I don't think felt out of place. We've created a place where those were okay. But when we insert them into a place that they feel out of place, then they don't work. They might still be funny, but they're awkward because they didn't fit. And that's the art versus the science of it, right? Edmund, if you get a chance, I think your audio's on.
Yeah.
Thanks. And if we can think about that, if we can think about how do we, because there's a real power, there's a real connection. When it does work, it works really well.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to learn how to do. We need to learn how to naturally integrate story, naturally integrate authentic, real, dynamic experience. Not as an insertion into the talk, but just as integral to the talk itself. You know, there's a lot of talk about story and the importance of story, and it's important. Story matters. We remember story, right?
Yeah.
People will remember the story about my failure, in that they see that, they feel that, and it creates a different level of memory than if it's just a random data point on an Excel spreadsheet. But one of the interesting things about the research space is, if we think about a traditional, like many of the people here are probably STEM students, like we heard from Edmund earlier in organic chemistry, right? Like traditional STEM field. And when we go and when we write a journal article, right, in that space, we erase the story. We give the methodology as if we didn't have to figure it out, as if there was never a mistake, we just give it as a tidy, like, here's the recipe. And then we give the data as, here's the data. And then we give the discussion, here's the discussion. Maybe we get a little interesting, but really, like, okay, discussion point number 1. Like, who says that? Well, we do we do in a journal article, right? But essentially we've erased what was a story. Your research is a story. You had a knowledge gap. You had something you wanted to figure out. You figured out how you thought you might be able to figure it out. Then you tried to do it that way, and something didn't work, and something did work, and you changed it a little bit, and then you got an answer, and you were either surprised, or you were happy, or you were puzzled, or you were like all of these things happened. And you had some sleeps in there, and you had some good days in there, and you had some bad days in there. Like, that's a story.
Yeah.
And science erases the story. And one of the things we can do when we can present is we can bring some of the story back. And I argue you should. You should. Okay. The difference between a research presentation and the other ways we can convey information about what you did, like a journal article, is you're actually here, you're actually in the room, you're actually talking about it. So we don't want the robot version. The journal article is kind of the robot version, right? Like, and I equate journal articles with filing cabinets, right? Background, methodology, results, discussion, and then the reader goes and the reader makes sense of it, and the reader opens a drawer and looks and shuts it and goes to another one and opens it and looks and shuts it and goes to another one and opens it and says, okay, now I've figured out what I need from that. As a presenter, you get to choose. You get to choose what to share. You get to choose the order to share. And we actually want you to. We want you to do it in a way that is rigorous. Like, we don't want you to make things up. It's a story, but it's true. Like, story doesn't mean fiction. Novel means fiction, not story. The best stories are always the true ones. We know this, right? Stranger than fiction. Truth is stranger than fiction. Right? So we need you to not be so hesitant to and we need and we know that audiences respond when we're not so hesitant. And Soha, if you think about the talks you listen to, right? Like some you noticed tried these things and they didn't work, and some tried and did work. The ones that tried and did work were probably the best talks.
Yeah.
The ones that tried and didn't work probably weren't the worst talks. The worst talks are probably the ones you can't remember at all, and they didn't do anything.
Yeah.
They were just da, 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 da.
Yeah.
And it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to figure out whether or not they're going to work. If you're thoughtful about the way you include humor, and you're thoughtful about the way you include story, and you're thoughtful about the way you include personal anecdote, it's very likely to work. The people for whom it didn't work probably weren't being thoughtful about it. They just did it randomly.
Mm.
They didn't think ahead. They didn't plan. It just happened, and it was like, oh, I don't know why I shared that. Right? And it was a little awkward, and it didn't really work. But it's because they didn't think about it. They didn't work at making it work. And if you do that, it will work. It's not random whether it works.
Yeah. Okay.
It works
I
because
get it.
it works because you're thoughtful about it ahead of time.
Yeah. So, talking about the storytelling and have a story. So nowadays, university encourage a student and postdoc to translate their research into a startup and venture. So in this case, you have lots of opportunity to present your work in a different way. Usually, it's very time restrict, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, or 5 minutes, and your audience going to be different. Could be people in investor, businessman. So what is your advice is for, because it's I work as with two startups, and I have different opportunity to present what I did. So one of them was based on my research. So very challenging because you don't want to go for the detail in your research, but you don't want to actually make it that is very simple. So what is your advice is how we can actually make a story out of the research that is engaging and understandable for people
The
without
best
that?
story about the research is the story that already exists. You're not turning the research into a story. You're allowing the story that already exists to emerge. When we try and turn the research into a story, it's a gimmick, it's a game, it doesn't work. It's like that's not the right path. The right path is simply to let the story let the stories that are already within the research emerge, right? And when we do that, it works really well. There's another piece of this that's not really about story, but it was embedded in your question, and that is, how do we get people to understand what we're doing in a way that's clear and accessible and quick, right? And the challenge to that is you need to be able to explain your work in less than a minute.
Yeah.
You need to learn to be able to explain your work in somewhere between 20 and 30 seconds in basically a single sentence. And it's not that you're explaining all the work and all the complexity of the work, it's that you're building a frame. You're building the scaffold. I'll give you a really easy way to do this. I'm gonna drop it in the chat. in order to, and this is a bit of the what you're figuring out, right? I am, and this is the beginning of what you're doing. What are you actually doing? By, and this is how you're doing it, so that, and this is the outcome of what you've done.
Yeah.
You fill that sentence out. I am by order to so that. And it gives you somewhere between 35 and 50 words. And a really clear understanding of like, oh, I understand what you're doing now. And one of the things all great talks do is people understand what the person's doing in the first minute. Too often what happens is it's 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes into the talk, and some people have already checked out, and other people are like, oh, I finally get it. Oh, now I get it. The final minute of the talk, we're like, oh, now I get it, right? You need that moment to be in the beginning of the talk, not at the end of the talk. Because once people get it, you can pile in all kinds of technical detail, jargon, and complexity. All kinds of technical language. Once I understand what you're doing, you can pile in technical language, and I may not know what it means, but I understand it even though I don't know what it means, because I understand what you're doing. Whereas when I don't understand what you're doing, and you put in technical language that I don't understand, it alienates. And then we finish, and I don't understand. I know you're smart because you used a whole bunch of words that I don't understand, but I don't know what you're doing. So a funny thing happens in academia, right? We get positive, hi Rula, nice to see a face. Thank you. Anyone else who wants to turn on and be a face, you're welcome to. Be delightful. We get positive feedback because people think we're smart. But the point isn't to have people think you're smart. The point is to share and help people understand something, right? And that's when people know you're smart. Oh, I think you must be smart because I didn't understand you, versus I know you're smart because because you explained something to me. That's where we want to get. That's where we want to get to. And it's, this space is not rocket science. This is not the hardest thing you have to do. But you do have to work at it. You do have to work at learning to communicate in ways that are clear and accessible and concise. And when you do that, the impact that you have is going to dramatically increase. And when you do that, your doors are going to open for you and your career, and people are going to look and be like, oh, you got so lucky. And you didn't get lucky. There's nothing lucky about what happened. You got good at communicating what you do, how you do it, what you're capable of doing next. And when you get good at communicating those things, the work that you've already done has a bigger impact. And people want to work with you, and people want to hire you, and people want to be around you. And that's when doors open. We call it increasing your luck surface area. Is it lucky you get a job? Yeah, there's always a little bit of luck involved in getting a job. But you're not lucky, you increased your luck surface area. And when you increased your luck surface area, that's what networking does. Increases your luck surface area. And when you do that, doors open.
Yeah, great advice. So you at the beginning of your talk, you talk about the AI. So we had many questions in registration. People shared
about AI.
about AI. Should we use it or not? How we use it? And actually, I taught a course last year, and for the assignment, actually, I encourage a student to use AI. And it was part of the assignment was giving a presentation. And what I realized that those group that it was a group presentation didn't use AI at all.
Did a
They
better job.
better job, much better, so scientifically and regard the creativity
So
of the presentation.
the problem isn't AI. The problem is how we use AI.
Yeah.
I've put a website in there, tools.presentbetter.org. And anyone who signs up there, you'll get a free credit. Anyone who signs up in the next 24 hours, I'll go bump your free credit to 5 credits. So you can play around and have some fun. It'll be my thank you for you having come today. It's your freebie.
Great. Thank you.
I think I built this because I think it's AI that's useful when you're building a presentation. The AI that I think isn't useful is the AI that you give it the journal article and it gives you back a presentation. Because what happens, building a good presentation is hard. But the work that you put in to build it is building the mastery that you need in order to be effective delivering it. And when you skip the building process, you skip the mastery development process. And when you skip the mastery development process, you get up there on stage and you deliver it, but you're delivering someone else's talk, and we know. And there's something off, and we sense it and we see it, and you don't have the mastery that you need. So this is one of the things that I see happening when people use AI to build talks, is that talks sound really good, but we know there's something wrong with them. The other thing that I see happening is one of the things that you need to do at this moment in your career, at this time in your career, is you need to discover your voice. You need to build your voice. And when you use AI's got its voice. AI's got a voice that it thinks you should sound like. And if you sound like that, it'll be better. So AI, when you use AI to develop your voice, you're not actually developing your voice. You're developing the voice that AI thinks you should have. And you end up someplace that isn't actually you anymore. It's the intersection between AI and you. And then when you go to do a job or an interview or a career, or you just wake up and you're like, who am I anymore? And so we just need to be thinking about this. AI is super useful. I was talking to someone the other day who uses AI to build slides. First of all, they're a senior researcher. And second of all, they build the slide deck first. They build what all the slides are going to be, and then they tell Gamma to go build it for them. But Gamma's not building the deck from scratch. Gamma's building the deck from the outline they're giving it. That's a very different process than Gamma building the deck from scratch and then you trying to correct it, right? It's closer to Grammarly, which is editing our work, than Claude, which is writing it for us.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that we need to constantly be thinking about. And it's not that it's wrong to have Claude write some stuff for us, but we need to be careful about where in our expertise are we allowing it to operate. Is it this thing on the periphery that we don't really care about and we just want it to be produced? That's okay, maybe. Or is it central? And it's our thing and it's our knowledge and it's our, and when we get it, when we start using it to mess around in there, that's, I think, when we're in the danger area. And I just, we need to be having more conversations like this. I wish we had tons of time because I would love a conversation with each of you about the way you're using AI and how you're navigating this space and how it feels and and I've had lots of these conversations with people, which is informing what I'm saying. But we need to be doing more of it. We need to be doing more of it. Yeah. I see, Mary, you nodding as you're thinking, right? Like, I don't have this all figured out, people. Yeah. I don't have this all figured out. Nobody does. Yeah. And anyone who tells you they have it all figured out, your radar should go up because there's snake oil. Every
day there is something new happening. Every day there's something new happening, and we keep learning, and we learn something, and 2 weeks later, oh, it's already old story, and then like, how I'm going to catch up with all these changes and stuff, right? So thank you I already signed for the link. Looking forward to
the thing that those tools do, and if you get in there and play around with them a little bit, you'll notice, is that you need to bring something to them, and then what they do is react to it. And they don't tell you how to make it better. They just tell you what they hear, and they ask you questions about it. And then you're in charge of making it better. They're actually mimicked around the way I believe feedback should be given and feedback should happen. And too often we give advice. Oh, this is what we think you should do. But you're getting advice from someone who doesn't understand your work yet, and they're telling you how to present your work. Right? You understand your work better than they do. And really the advice that you need isn't, I actually call it insight, not advice. Really what you need is insight about what people hear and mishear about what you're saying. And as soon as you start getting that advice, you can make it better. It becomes really obvious. The exercise I'll do, I'll give you, and this is the feedback tool. One of the feedback tools, actually all the feedback tools are based on these kinds of exercises. The exercises I do is at its most pure level, you send two people out of the room for the presentation practice. The presenter practices their presentation. The two people come back in the room. The presenter is no longer allowed to talk. The audience tells the two people who came back in the room what the presenter said. And the presenter just listens to the audience explain to the two people who couldn't hear what was said. And it's fascinating what happens, right? Because the audience gets things wrong and the presenter immediately wants to jump in and correct, but they're not allowed to. It's like literally duct tape. No, you're not allowed to talk. You just have to listen. But you do that and you really quickly, like you just listen and you take notes and you really quickly figure out how you're going to do it differently next time so that people understand. And it's really powerful. It's really powerful.
So my next question is about anxiety. So all of us, especially if it's the first time, we were really anxious, nervous, and it happened that it's very hard sometimes for people to control this. And what your advice is, how we can manage this?
Yeah, I'll give you 3 different anxiety pieces. One of them is, we're anxious about the presentation, so we procrastinate and we under-prepare, and then it's sometimes not that good, right? Like sometimes our presentation objectively isn't that good because we didn't we were nervous about it. And the way we protect ourselves when we're nervous is by not trying as hard as we could. And when we do that, you know, we should be nervous because it's not that good. So one of the things you have to do is you have to over prepare. You have to, if you've never done it, some people have and they're still nervous. That's okay. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But some people haven't really prepared. They haven't really practiced. They haven't really tried. They haven't worked at the art of presenting. And then they're nervous because they're not going to be that good at it, which is true. They're not going to be that good at it. So one of the things you have to do is you have to work at your presentation. You have to test your presentation. You have to see how people react to it. You have to work at it. You have to work at understanding how presentations operate and get better at it. And then as you get better at it, you're just nervous because you're standing up in front of people talking. You're not nervous because you don't know if it's going to be good. And that's one of the things. And then there's the nerves of just standing up in front of people talking. And those are real. And that's our nervous system running wild on it, going a little haywire on us. And we needed to develop some strategies to do that. We need to develop some strategies to manage that. And one of the things we can do is we can practice the experience. So you don't get enough, you don't do enough talks to get a lot of practice presenting in front of an audience. So what you need to do is practice the experience of presenting in front of an audience. And, that kind of practice is in a room, like in a classroom. That kind of audience practice is sitting with the anxiety before you practice. I put another website link in there, the presentbetter.org blog, and there's in the blog, if you scroll down through, maybe Soha, you can find this while I'm talking. Yeah. There's one called Practice the Experience or Better Practice for Better Presentation, something like that. Maybe you can find it and put that in the blog, because I talk about this in that. And the talk about this is, go and sit and maybe throw on YouTube someone else's talk and imagine the audience being full and imagine yourself getting nervous, and then do a recording of some of the, I maybe typed it wrong. I don't have my glasses on.
Yeah, it's not working.
Oh, it's presentbetter.org/blog. If you go to presentbetter.org, the blog, there'll be a link to the blog site. There should have been a / there. And record someone on your phone introducing you. And then play the recording of someone introducing you, and then start right after the introduction, right? And this is the experience. We don't get to do it quietly in our closet with nobody listening in a whisper. We have to do it in a room with a big voice, imagining people in the audience. And we have to start when someone else tells us to start, not when, okay, I'm going to start now. Oh, okay, now I'll start. Okay, no, you start, and you have to go all the way through the whole thing, even when you mess it up a little bit. You can't start and then restart again. You have to just go. And you get some reps doing that. You get some reps being in the front of the classroom. You get some reps standing in the middle of the stage with slides behind you, not in front of you. And you practice that experience, and it becomes a little more familiar. And you're doing it while you're nervous, and you're doing it, and you still get through it, and you still finish. And now even when you're nervous, even when you're standing in front of the room, even when you're talking in a louder voice, you can still get to the finish line. And it'll be okay. You'll get to the finish line. And that helps us feel a little better. It doesn't get rid of our nerves, but it helps us realize we can present even while nervous. And the irony is, once we learn we can present even while nervous, we become less nervous about presenting. but we have to learn that we can successfully present even while nervous. And then the third leg of that stool is learning to turn the dial on our nervous system on command. So we can do things like close our eyes and reset, and then start. And that closing of our eyes is a mental reset. It's a break. And then we reopen and we start. And we can do that just before we start. We can do breathing exercises like box breathing, or we can do breathing exercises like belly breathing, where we train ourselves to pay attention to our breath, and we can reset our nervous system. We can reset our nervous system. One of the things that happens as our anxiety increases is our sight narrows. We lose our peripheral vision. So one of the things we can do to help reset our nervous system is open our peripheral vision. Watch your fingers. Like, you can literally do this. Put your fingers in front of you, and then track your fingers as they move into your peripheral vision, and track them 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 even further, even further. This will actually lower your lower your blood pressure, lower your breathing, because it's shifting your nervous system. And so we can have some of these tricks that we do, and then we can incorporate some of those things into that practice routine, so that when we're getting ready to present, one of the things we're doing is we're resetting our nervous system before we go on stage. So yes, it's going to bounce back. Our nervous system's going to accelerate when we're on stage. But we're not going to the stage already here. We're going to the stage down here because we've been able to reset it backstage or off stage or just before we go on the stage through some of these exercises that we've learned to do that can lower our heart rate, lower our blood pressure. And we can do that through our breathing, and we can do that through our sight, and we can do that through visualization exercises where we calm ourselves before we start. So do those things. Practice nervous, practice in the space, practice the experience, build a better talk, get better at talking, gain more confidence that your talk actually works. And then the third leg, the nervous system, learn to be able to, on command, lower your nervous system, reset your nervous system on command, so that when you start, you're not starting already in that fight or flight space where your nervous system's already a little crazy, right? But we've been able to reset it before we start. I don't think you can start a presentation too calm if you're nervous about presenting. If you're not nervous about presenting, you can start too calm, because like we've all seen that, right? They're just monotone and they're not actually interested. But if you're nervous, getting calm is really powerful. And then you can get excited because you can lean in and you have something interesting, and but now you're the right kind of excited. Now you're the right kind of excited.
Oh, thank you so much. So there's something that I want to ask you. So when I was doing my PhD supervisor told me, never freelance. When you do the presentation, write it down the script for each slide, then practice and revise your script to feel it's natural. So I'm still using this practice. I always write the script for my slide and practice and practice. So what do you think? Do you think this is a good approach, or I'm doing wrong all the time?
I don't like it.
Okay.
I don't like it when people memorize. 3-minute thesis competition, sure. That's a particular type of event. I threw another link in there for those interested, which is a YouTube channel where I talk about a lot of this stuff. 3-minute thesis, fine.
Yeah.
It's a it's only 3 minutes. Like, yeah, you're going to memorize a script, but a 20-minute conference talk, I don't like it when it's memorized, because as soon as you get a word wrong, as soon as you lose your place, you're done. I want you to memorize the trajectory. I want you to have a talk you don't need to memorize. So the nice thing about a story, you don't need to memorize a story. If there is a natural trajectory, so I call this A and Q. I call this the A and Q method, not Q&A, A and Q,
Yeah.
answers and questions. You tell me something and I naturally have questions about it, and then you answer those questions. And as I answer a question, you naturally have another question and you answer that. And you create a trajectory for your talk, and that's what your slides are. So people get stuck. They don't know the transition between one slide and the next. The reason you can't remember the transition is because you have a lousy presentation. You have a filing cabinet that you're trying to present. You can't remember the transition because there isn't a logical transition between these things. When there's a logical transition, when there's a natural trajectory, when there's an unfolding of information, you don't forget the transition because the transition's natural. And that's actually how you want to put a talk together. You want to put a talk together where you're constantly triggering questions and then answering them. And then you need to memorize the opening and you need to memorize the close because you want those to be powerful moments. But everything else is just triggers. Everything else is like, you know how you're going to finish this slide, and that's going to naturally trigger the next one, which is the beginning of that slide. And you know how you're going to finish that slide. You know what the end is, but you don't need to memorize everything in between. It's your work. And memorization causes more problems than it solves. One, it takes a whole bunch of time. And two, it makes it feel not natural. It makes it feel performative instead of natural. And three, inevitably you forget something somewhere and you go blank. And then you can't find it. Because you tried to, because you're searching for the memory of it. And four, which is the real issue, now you're constantly sitting in your own head while you're presenting, trying to find the script. You're not in the room presenting. You're not looking at people. You're not seeing how they react. You're just reading the script. So when they get point one right away, you're not moving to point two because your script says you have 3 more sentences about point one. But they get it. You can go to point two. And they get point two really quickly. You can go to point three, but point three they didn't get. And you have to sit and explain a little longer. And you can't because you're in your head and you don't notice that they didn't get it because you're reading a script. As soon as you're in your head with a script, you're no longer in the room with your audience. So I talked earlier about present being your there's something of value in your talk that's a present for the audience, right? It's not just you presenting information, it's information that has value, it's a present. But it's also you being present while you're doing it. It's you being present with your audience. It's you being present in the room. It's not you being in your head reading a script. So, you know, are there times when we use a script? Absolutely. Are there times when it's a memorized performance? Absolutely. But it's the exception, not the rule.
I think this is work when you have a pitch competition because it's a very restrict time and you need to be performer rather than presenter, I guess.
And that's a different space. It's a different space. TED Talks, like 99% of the TED Talks are 100% memorized.
Mm.
It's one of the reasons I don't really like TED Talks anymore. The TED Talks I really like are the ones from 10, 15, 20 years ago when they weren't memorized.
Yeah.
There's a difference between memorization and mastery.
Mm.
What I want you to get to is mastery, not memorization. And it's when earlier I was talking about AI, if AI does it, you have to memorize it because you didn't do it. You don't have mastery of it. All you have is memorization. But when you have mastery of it, you don't need to memorize.
Yeah.
And that's the space we actually want to, that's the space that is an unquestionable, unassailable validation of your knowledge. And in a way that nothing else on the planet can do. Writing can't do it because AI does it. Memorization can't do it because we don't know who produced what you memorized.
Yeah.
And we see it and we hear it and we feel it and it's different. And it's magic and it's awesome. And that's the space that you want to be able to get to with the core of your own work.
Yeah.
The core of your own work, you need to be able to talk about this way.
Yeah, so we almost actually passed the 1 hour, but
this happens.
Lots of things to actually discuss. I want to quickly ask this because I think it's very important. At the end, we usually have the Q&A, and I see some people don't handle it well, especially when the people that ask is very critical, or maybe sometimes people are not very polite. I see that people can't handle it properly, make them nervous, or so how we can handle if somebody asks a question that is very critical, questioning the whole research that we did, or not very polite, how we should handle this situation.
Tell them to go away.
Actually, once at the one of the conference, I was
that's
some sort of thing that people say. Yeah, I'm not answering this question.
So I wouldn't say I'm not answering that question. I would say, that's an interesting question that seems to be working at the, questioning the fundamental that question seems to not really be about the research itself, but the foundation on which the research is built. And I'd be happy to have that conversation with you after with a cup of coffee.
Yeah, nice.
I want to talk about the research itself right now, not the foundation on which the research is built.
Very smart.
Let's have that conversation offline.
Yeah. Okay, so
the Q&A thing, I'll give you 3 quick things on the Q&A that I think that's the exception, not the rule.
Yeah.
Right. 3 quick things on Q&A that I think are super useful. One is recognize the difference between the questions that you already know the answer to and the ones you have to think about, and the ones that are beyond what you studied, and have great confidence in your answers about the ones that are about your work and you've already studied and you know the answer to, and answer those quickly and precisely and with great confidence. And then the questions that are beyond the work, that are at the periphery of the work, that are extending the work into an area that you haven't studied, preface those. It's an interesting question. I haven't really thought about that. Love to talk to you about it afterwards when I've had some time to think. It's an interesting question. I haven't really thought about that, but my initial reaction is I'm going to reserve the right to change my mind, though, once I've thought about it more. Have humility in those questions as you move beyond the scope of what you've already thought about. Great confidence within what you've thought about, lots of humility beyond that. And really, as you think about answering a question, know which category it is before you answer. And you have two different ways to answer. One is like, yes, I know the answer to this, and I'm going to answer it very quickly, cleanly, precisely. Clarity, confidence. I haven't thought about this before. This is outside the scope. This is a space where this is really important, right? Especially when you're doing your dissertation defense. Your dissertation defense is actually about these questions that are beyond the scope of your work, and they're a test. Yeah. Will you have humility, or do you think it's an oral exam and you're going to try and pretend you know even though you don't? That's where you get yourself in a lot of trouble really quickly. And you gain an enormous amount of credibility with an audience at a research conference when you say, that's really interesting. I haven't really thought about it before. I want, happy to have a conversation with you later about it, or happy to give you I'm happy to give you a tentative answer with the reservation that this is tentative because I'm thinking about this in real time right now. And then I promised you three. The third one is you can actually shape the Q&A a little bit by having your final slide not be questions, not questions with a question mark or just a question mark, but have your final slide be 3 or 4 key points you made. And have your question, have your opening of questions not be, does anybody have any questions? But be this. What questions do you have about the things I've been talking about?
Right. So maybe.
And the things you've been talking about are on that slide.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah.
And what you've done is you put very clear guardrails around the questions. And when someone asks that question about the foundational issue over here that has nothing to do with what the hell we're talking about, and it's not about the research, you have a very easy way to say that's a really interesting question. It's not about the things that I've been talking about. It's about beyond the scope of what I've been talking about. I want to reserve the question time for what I've been talking about. And
Thank you so much.
And once we've gotten through the questions about what I've been talking about, if we have time, I'll come back to you.
Great advice. So I think we ran out of time. Can we have just 1 or 2 questions from audience if they have any? You can unmute yourself if you have any question. If nobody have a question, any final thought, final advice before we wrap up the webinar?
I just have a small question, maybe.
Yeah, sure.
Hi, Dr. Andrew. It has been great to listen to you. I know, like being a person who stutter, I have been doing the opposite things that you have been talking about. So, so I just have a question to get an idea about some creative idea about practicing more academic presentations. I do go to the public speaking club like Toastmaster to speak, but with such a limited opportunity, either to speak in a lab or in a conference, or do you have any creative thought to practice more about the academic talks?
It's great. Like Toastmasters is awesome. I'm not necessarily a big fan of the way Toastmasters thinks about talks, but I'm a huge fan of going and getting out there and doing talks and doing the reps and getting feedback and getting, like, I think it's great. So do that. Look for opportunities within, like, look for other opportunities where you can do talks, you know, whether that's a shirk story competition or a 3-minute talk, or going and talking in a, you know, if you're TAing a class, you know, maybe you can do one of the lectures one of the days, or maybe you can do a part of the lecture. Maybe there's a piece that the professor would say, sure, you can do that part that's coming up. But what I'm talking about is practicing the experience, mimicking everything except the audience. So creating the space and creating the timing and creating the mental pressure, and you just don't have an audience, right? And that's when I say practice the experience. What I'm talking about is, you know, too often what we do when too often what I hear when I like, okay, oh yeah, I've been practicing my talk. Well, what does your practice looks like? Well, it's like them sitting in their bedroom, like with their laptop, talking quietly so their roommates can't hear them, right? And that's practicing the words of your talk, but not the experience of your talk. And that's why I'm saying, like, go find an empty classroom, play a YouTube video of someone else's talk before you start. Have someone introduce you, and you have to start when their introduction stops. And you have to do it from the front of the room, and it's a classroom, and there's a whole bunch of empty chairs, and there's a space where there's a volume that your voice has to demand. And the slides are behind you, and they're on a big screen. Because those things are basically unfamiliar to us if we haven't done a lot of talks. And we want to make as much as possible. We want to get familiar with as many pieces of the puzzle as possible, right? So then when we walk in the only thing that's new is there are now people in the chairs, which admittedly is a big new. But a lot of times when people walk in the room, people in the chairs is new. They're not used to speaking in a space that big. They're not used to speaking from the front of the room. They're not used to speaking with the slides behind them. They're not used to having a clicker in their hand while they speak. They're not used to having to start when someone else says start. They're not used to, so there's like 9 other things going on. And we can get rid of, you can practice everything except the audience. And everything except the audience is actually quite a lot of stuff. It's quite a lot of things. It's surprising when we list them out. Mary, you had a question or no?
Yes. My question is, how can we find balance in terms of how many, do we put pictures and few words and talk, or more words and talk? Because sometimes people are visual, sometimes they want to see what we're talking about. So how can we find the balance between the words and the visuals and not overcrowd the presentation? Thank you.
So 2 things, like we could do hours on visuals, but I'll give you a couple of things to begin with. One is, your slides aren't notes. And your slides aren't notes for the audience. And your slides aren't notes for after you've spoken to send them later. Right? So one of the problems we have is we're used to, like, the majority of the slides we see are slides that are built for classrooms, and slides that are built for classrooms have a dual purpose. They're also built for notes after the person's done talking for the exam. And we've we've kind of screwed up presenting that way, because now we give people this, like, now we have these dual purpose, and it's the wrong model, right? Your slides are only for the presentation moment. And one of the things you need to realize is every single second someone is reading, they're not listening. Because you can't actually listen and read at the same time. It's neurologically impossible. So anytime, any words on your slide, like a single word, people can read in a second and they're still listening, because you can stop listening for that long and you didn't miss anything. But as soon as you have 3 or 4 or 5 words or a sentence, they just missed part of your talk. And there is no, this whole idea of like, oh, some people are visual learners and some people are auditory learners, and we should put the words on there for the people who aren't auditory learners. Like, no. You're not, this is not an either or situation. Some people are going to look at the slides, some people are going to listen. No, your presentation is you talking. Your presentation is about you talking. And the slides are there to supplement and complement and assist, not replace. It's not an either or. And one of the things that you can, so a couple of tricks in this space is, one, delete most of the darn words, right? Just get rid of them. But the other thing is, and this is the one that I think is the most powerful, and it's a little hard to wrap your head around. But if we think about the temporal relationship, how's that for a mouthful? Temporal relationship between your audio track, the audio track of you speaking, and the visual track of you showing slides. And what we normally do is we show a slide and then we speak about the slide. And what that means is everybody's looking at the slide and everybody's ahead of us when we're speaking, because they're processing the slide and they're guessing what we're going to say, and now they're ahead. Reverse that. Talk and then show the slide after you talked about it. Everything will change. I'm going to show you a slide, and it's my data. X-axis is going to be time. Y-axis is percentage of material as it's eliminated from the sample. We're trying to decay it from the sample. And you'll see the experimental group, the control group, downward slope to the right. We get rid of about 50% of the material by the time we're done our 40-minute trial. Then the question is, what happens in the different experimental groups? I'm going to show you 3 different experimental groups, and we're going to see. Let me show you the control group first. Here's the XY axis. You already have processed it. You already know what it looks like. Now I show it to you. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to show you control group 1, number 1. It kind of looks the same. Click. Control group number 2, we get a little better with the second, experimental number 2, we get a little better. Here's the second one. Question is, what about the third one? How much better does the third one get? Well, let's look at it. Click. Now people are listening to you. They're looking at your slide now because you're setting them up for the last click, right? Like, this is the reveal of my results. How much better is it? Turns out it's a lot better. Cool, right? But now the primary thing, or I have 5 points I want to make about this, right? Next, we're going to talk about, the importance of visuals, and I have 3 points I want to make about visuals. The first one is about getting rid of most of your text on your slides and having simpler slides. The second one is testing the slides ahead of time. And the third one is the temporal relationship about slides. Okay. Click. Now they come up. in case you missed one. Now they come up. Or I have 5 things I want to talk about this, or I have a bunch of things I want to talk about this, and you talk about the things. Then you're like, okay, let's make sure, let's as review, let's review what I just talked about. Click, now you show them all. And they're 5 bullet points. But the 5 bullet points are coming in after you've talked about them as review, as reminder, not ahead of time. Because if I show you the 5 bullet points ahead of time, you're thinking about number 4 while I'm talking about number 1. Every time. And the person next to you is thinking about 3, and the person behind you is thinking about 5, and the person behind them is on their cell phone checking their email because they already understand all 5 of those things and they don't think any of them are interesting. And they already know what you're going to say. And you just gave them permission not to listen because you told them what you were going to say before you said it. We do this all the time, right? We give people permission not to listen because we tell them when. It's one of the things one of the great misadvices about presenting. Tell people what you're going to say it, then tell people what you said. Guess what? When you tell people what you're going to say before you say it, you just gave everyone permission to not listen because now they know, now they think they know what you're going to say. Don't do it. Tease it, foreshadow it, but don't be explicit. I know, everybody's being told, give an explicit table of contents, make sure it's really clear, all the 5 parts of all the different things that you're going to say. It's lousy advice for engagement. It's lousy advice for engagement. It's great advice when you're teaching a class and you don't care about engagement. I'm teaching a class. My responsibility is to teach you the information, and then I'm going to give you a test about whether or not you understand it. I'm going to test you on it later. It's your job to pay attention whether or not you're interested. It's my job to tell you what I'm going to do so you can decide to pay attention to it. Like, this is a different interaction when we're teaching a class than when you're doing a presentation. When you're doing a presentation, there is no test after. Different space, different rules. Yeah, everybody makes the mistake of transferring the rules to a different space and then wonders why it doesn't work.
Yeah. Thank you, because I have a presentation next week and it's just 5 minutes, 5 slides, and I have it like all written. I'm thinking now, as I go, I will click and then the words will come so that they can listen to me. I will do that way.
Talk about it and then show the slide.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do it. It's not like it has to always come after.
Yeah.
Sometimes you actually want to show it and then talk about what people are seeing.
Yeah.
But it's like, be dynamic, right?
Yeah.
Like, sometimes talk and then show. Sometimes show and then talk. Sometimes have the slide be the center of attention. Sometimes be the center of attention.
Yeah.
And then show the slide after. Like, this is how we create a dynamic interaction.
Yeah.
When we get in a pattern, right? Everybody tunes out.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. It's one of my, we didn't talk about it at all. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. It was a great conversation. We learned a lot. Thank you for everyone joining us today. We will share the recording. I hope that the recording okay. And I'm so sorry for the interruption between. Never happened before. I don't know. It was because of the team, because of the internet. It happened. I see that sometimes people just kick out, but just come back right after. And I heard that
I tried a couple of times. You know what I finally did? I restarted my computer.
Oh, because I
so
heard
I'm sorry
that
you had to all sit around, but I'm glad you waited.
I just worried that you couldn't actually join. I was thinking, okay, I just create a Zoom link and just share it, because I heard that Teams sometimes doesn't work properly, but it was the first time to happen for us. Thank you
Well,
so much.
we'll piece the recording together, and thank you for
Yeah.
the people who came and stuck with us. This has been a fun way to spend a Friday afternoon.
Yeah, great. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.